Well, we're just minutes away from hearing the president. He's leading a roundtable discussion on prison reform. We're going to bring it as soon as it begins. In the meantime, forced to work for welfare, the Trump administration is allowing states to require Medicaid recipients to have a job. This is sure, obviously, to get a lot of backlash. But the question is, would it be justified? To Bold founder Carrie Sheffield and Fox News contributor Katherine Timpf. Something tells me, Carrie, you're okay with that you think that there may be a problem with this. Am I right, or am I guessing wrong here?
Oh, I am more than okay with this change. I think it's exactly what we need to lift people out of poverty. We saw this in 1996 when Bill Clinton worked with the Republican Congress in a bipartisan way to implement these sort of work requirements to get public assistance. And what we saw was millions of people lifted out of poverty, millions of people who had their families lifted to a better standard of living. So This is basically helping people, making sure that they're being held accountable to help themselves.
Kat?
Yeah, I think that people might call it cruel. I don't really know why they would call it cruel, because I feel as though working to get stuff isn't cruel so much as it's just kind of how life is. And as Carrie pointed out, Bill Clinton did this. It worked very well. I'm sure it'll be demonized because it's President Trump's idea, but it's not the first time that something like this has been done. And when it's been done, it's worked.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there is this overarching narrative, like this Walmart news today. I've seen some pushback on Twitter. People are saying, well, Walmart is rich. They should be paying unskilled workers $20 an hour. If you reward unskilled workers, we'll never have skilled workers. So, I mean, you are actually empowering people to do something that may innately be inside of them, and maybe they need a nudge to get it done.
Right. There's this idea that welfare is compassionate, but it's not compassionate to not offer opportunities for people to actually work. Its goal shouldn't be to stay on welfare forever, which we're seeing that happen in far too many cases. And as you mentioned, that can't make somebody feel very good.
Right, exactly. This is treating people as an asset rather than a liability. It's saying you have something and you are required to give back. That is the mentality shift that needs to happen, that we are all assets. We all have something to contribute. And exactly, Kat, like when you're it's a liability mindset. So you're having people feel like they're crippled, like they have to be stuck in the system. And it's really, basically the system is really a ceiling rather than creating it as a jumping board for them to jump up to newer heights.
And I think it's cruel that there are people born with gifts. Everybody's born with some gifts, and they never have a chance to unlock it because they're, you know, if you're born cradle to grave, sometimes you don't even understand how to get out, to propel yourself out of that situation. This prison reform roundtable, thoughts on that? I had the governor of Alabama, and I think she pushed back. I think she took the question the wrong way, but at least 10,000, perhaps some numbers say perhaps 10,000 felons were able to vote in the Alabama election because she clarified the voting rules right before the election. And you have a lot of states that are saying felons should be allowed to vote. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, depending on the felony, I don't really have a problem with felons being allowed to vote. I think there are a lot of criminal justice issues that we need to take a look at, and I generally take pretty much the exact opposite view that President Trump's Attorney General does on a lot of these issues. I don't think that that's the biggest deal in the world, depending on what the felony is.
Well, I know that Jared Kushner, it is a big issue for him. He's taking it very personally, but because he's had family experience with the criminal justice system. So I know that there are voices within the administration who are trying to temper and say this is really about human freedom, because that's what it really should be. I do agree the punishment should fit the crime, but let's be honest, like the system is not uniform. It's not the way that it's implemented. It is not consistent. So let's be consistent in how we're doing it and making sure that the reason why, like mandatory minimum sentences, as far as I'm concerned, they're worthless because not worthless, but they're mindless. They're not allowing the punishment to really be tailored to the individual.
They let judges be real lazy. They let judges be really lazy because you know what? Each individual crime is different with different mitigating factors. There's no reason for something like that.
And I agree. I tend to agree with the mandatory sentencing thing, too, because there's a lot of times when you're in an environment where there could be a good kid and a really bad kid or bad kids who force someone to do something that if they're singled out and say, hey, you know what, I met your parents, I met your teacher, this isn't really you, we don't have to put you away for a minimum X amount of time to create a hardcore lifelong criminal. The flip side of that is there's some people who just should never probably come out.
Right. Well, you're right. Like, I mean, a lot of people, it becomes their master's degree in criminology, where if it was a minor crime where we could have rehabilitated them, prevented them, maybe go to juvenile as opposed to a hard prison, there are lots of things we could do to prevent the hardening of the criminals.
Right, absolutely. And I'm always on the side of more freedom. And this allows more freedom with sentencing. I'm sure there's been judges who have not wanted to lock someone away, someone who is a good kid, as you mentioned, and they've had to, and that person's life is not going to be better off, and society would miss out on whatever that person might have been able to offer society had the judge actually had the freedom to offer the sentence that he thought was appropriate.
Ladies, thank you both very, very much. Great seeing you. Meanwhile, is a retirement crisis looming? Oh, I'm going to ask, don't go away, guys. I want to ask you about this. A new survey showing nearly 4 in 10 Gen Xers just not ready for retirement. So Kat, what exactly does that mean? And does this also mean that millennials, are they worse off, or?
Yeah, statistics show that millennials are worse off, and that's not surprising. I mean, Gen Xers, we're already talking about 3 financial crises. We're talking about the fact that, pensions aren't really a thing anymore. It's mostly all 401k, where you have to save yourself. And saving money is hard because, let's face it, being alive is very expensive. And when you talk about millennials, added on top of that, there's just astronomical amounts of student loan debt where people think, retire, I will be dead before I can pay off my student loan.
Yeah, retirement is, living is expensive, Carrie, but it's also expensive for millennials who take money to rent hours so they can take pictures in front of a private jet to put on the Instagram thing.
We don't all do that, okay?
But I really believe this is peak materialism meets peak celebrityism, and I think it's draining the hell out of millennial bank accounts.
No, I agree. There is this sort of status, this keeping up with the Joneses, that everyone has to put up this facade on social media. But I also think it's just our kind of consumer culture coming home to roost. We're a rich, obese, fat, post-industrialized country that doesn't like to be. I'm speaking on a per capita pound basis. We're about 40 pounds heavier than we used to be, or so. I don't know, even 2 decades ago. So we're not taking care of ourselves, not either in our wallets or even our bodies. And I think that this is a cultural problem.
But some of this though does get to the notion of fear of missing out, right? Or living for the moment, living in the here and now. And how do we change that mindset? Because it started over the last 10 years where young folks, millennials, just sort of say, you know what, why save? I understand the skepticism.
Right.
Markets crash, housing crashes. Why should I put all of this money away to watch it get, crash and go up in smoke one day when I can go out and hang and maybe go to a Drake concert?
Right. Well, hanging is fun. I would probably pick a different artist than Drake to go to a concert. No offense, buddy. But I think the idea that try to look at it in a smaller term rather than a longer picture sometimes helps. Retirement is important, but just think, hey, maybe if I take the subway instead of taking a car today, even though it is kind of cold out, maybe if I actually go grocery shopping and make food instead of ordering delivery all the time, maybe I just take a picture of myself with the fancy clothes on in the dressing room, post it on Instagram, pretend that I bought it, don't actually buy it. Small little things like that can add up, and you can actually save money, which is better than saving nothing.
Let me tell you what adds up, those Uber trips.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
it's sad.
they add up.
They send you like a monthly report. I'm like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to know.
Every parent I know with a kid 18 to 25 is complaining to me about the Uber bills because their parents have to help pay for them as well. Ladies, you were fantastic. Thanks for sticking around for the other topic as well. Well, are tensions with North Korea easing? Maybe not. President Trump certainly knows he's willing to talk with North Korea, and Vice President Pence just issued a new warning, though, right after this.